Hello, Katie.
Hello, Abel. Here we are ready to model our first ever element in Blender. And it might sound like a bit of a strange one for your first ever 3D object, but it's going to be a shovel.
Yeah, it's quite a simple object, and we think that is a good way to start. Don't try to start with very complex characters. I think starting with objects is a very good way of getting used to the program and also understanding that most objects are made of very simple shapes. So let's see how we can do it. I'm gonna first get my reference images. You can download this in the project, and it's very useful to have a reference image before you begin doing something. And I'm gonna drag and drop my shovel here, and it's gonna be rotated there. But very easy. Here in the rotation of the objects here, you see that you have all the properties from my objects. It's actually called, this panel is called object properties.
Handy.
So I'm going to change the rotation. So probably I want this X to be a 90, and then the other ones, I'm going to put them at 0 and 0. So now it's looking nice and front. As I have my reference here all the time ready for me to look at it. And another thing I'm going to do is that we are going to start from this cube. Blender always puts a cube in the scene when you begin, and some people criticize that. They say, why do I want a cube at the beginning? And my theory is that almost, probably 90% of things can be modeled starting from a cube.
Okay.
So I'm really with them on putting a cube at the beginning.
So we're just going to start from this cube?
Yeah, we're going to start from this cube. And there are different ways of doing it. Personally, I love so much cubes that even this part of the shovel, the handle or this bar that usually is a tubular thing, can be as well done from a cube. Okay. Some people don't like it. Some people like it doing it from other objects, but let's see different ways in which we can do it. So let's actually make it. So let's see the two ways in which you can make it. So I'm going to name things because it's a good practice. So this is going to be called reference. I'm going to press enter. So my reference is there. And now this cube, I'm going to keep calling it cube because now I'm going to compare it with another one. Okay. So I'm going to do space bar and move. I'm going to move it to the right. And this is going to be a competition to see which object works better. And you see here in this panel, in the object mode, we have a panel add. Yeah. And it says shortcut Shift A. Some people like just using add, clicking there. Some people like Shift A. After a while, you get used to the Shift A and you can add it there. Okay. But I'm going to try not to use too many shortcuts because I don't want people to think that shortcuts are necessary. Yeah. The way you get a speed in a program is by doing things well, not by, not by doing many shortcuts. So you can do a cylinder. Cylinder makes sense. That's probably how 90% of people will make it. You make a cylinder, you put it there, and you see when you add it, here it says add cylinder, a little panel appear here. If I click here, I can change some options in my cylinder, including changing the radius of it, changing the depth, so I can make it longer, and changing the number of vertices. The number of vertices, you see that when I change them, it gets smoother. Yeah. But probably you are thinking, wow, I need so many vertices, and still I can see those lines. No worries, because even with less vertices, if we do right click and we say shade smooth, it's going to apply a shading. So the program, what it does is going to say, if there are two faces that are almost at the same angle, there's only a small transition between those faces, I'm going to apply a smooth transition between them. So when I do it, you see how now my cylinder gets very smooth?
Okay, even though you've got the same amount of vertices.
Exactly. The program is not doing it automatically because if I do this with the cube, because the cube right now doesn't have enough geometry, the program is going to try to smooth out something that should be quite hard at it. So if I do it and I do shade smooth, it looks horrible. Yeah. So in order to make it look pretty, we're going to have to add geometry on the corners. So the program at the beginning is thinking, look, I'm going to shade flat and you can shade smooth later if you want. So no worries if you are not understanding how something is working or you don't like how it's working. And you see that you have the same problem here now with my cylinder on the top level. You see that now because of the shade smooth, this top is looking very weird.
Smoothed out.
So we're going to be able to apply effectors to that to make it effectors. I don't know if they're called effectors. Sometimes I'm going to use names that are more coming from for Cinema 4D. Actually, they are called modifiers.
Modifiers.
So
okay.
Another thing that we can see is that when I click on each object, and if I click on my camera, you see that this panel changes, this panel on the right.
Yeah.
So if I press cube, I get a few more options. If I press camera, I get less. And I get some specific ones like this camera icon that appears here. So this is a dynamic panel that gives us a lot of properties on whatever we are clicking.
Okay.
And no worries if you see too many icons, we'll go through them, but we're going to go through them when we need them, okay? So I'm going to select this cylinder, and because we wanted it to look a bit smoother, let's see if we can apply one of these modifiers that can make it pretty. So usually a thing that kind of does a transition between two faces to make them a bit smoother, usually we call that bevel.
Bevel.
Yeah, I pronounce it probably badly because we don't differentiate in Spanish between the B and the V, but it's going to be a bevel. So you see here in the modifier, we have so many of them.
Oh, yeah.
We are not going to use them all, but for now, I'm going to apply a bevel. You see that there?
Yes.
So if I apply a bevel, I'm going to put them there, and let's see what happened there. You see that now the top of the of this cylinder got that like very ugly transition. What we need to do is to do more segments. So the more I do, the smoother it's getting. And with the amount, we can make it a bit shorter or a bit longer.
Okay, if you want it softer or...
Yeah, depending on how you want it. And there are options here for different type of profiles with different shapes for my profile in case I want something that kind of goes in or goes out. And even you can make a custom shape. So you can play with curves and kind of make custom shapes. So for now, we're going to keep ourselves on the simple options.
Okay.
But I want people to know that they don't need to be afraid of exploring if they want to start clicking things, because in this tutorial, we're going to go a bit on the simple solutions, but they can explore further. And another thing I have is that now, once I started modifying my object, you see that that panel that was allowing me to make it longer or shorter is gone.
Yeah, it's disappeared.
And that's one of the things that we have in Blender. Things kind of are not dynamic anymore, but now in return, we have an editable object. So now we want to make it longer. We could do it in a few different ways. We could either scale it. So we could place the scale here and scale my object so I can scale it. But the problem I have when I'm scaling my object, I'm not deleting it. You see what's happening now. If I scale it, I'm going to scale it in that position. Now my bevel got shorter. And if I scale it up, my bevel is getting longer.
Okay.
So sometimes instead, I don't like doing, there are solutions for that. We can scale it and then kind of like realign the transformations. But sometimes what I like when I'm modifying objects, I always recommend to people, it's good practice to do it through the edit mode. And what we are going to do is select points. So I recommend people, if now you want to make something longer, simply select the points on the top. So I'm selecting all the points on the top, do move, and move them there. It's a good practice, and it means that now I'm modifying objects without modifying the scaling of them.
Yeah, and that's just as simple.
Yeah. And another way you can do instead of selecting like that, another trick we're going to learn, if I click on one point, I would only select one point. But if I press Alt and click, it selects the loop.
Ah, that's very handy.
And that's going to be mega useful. Okay? So I was saying that you could do this entire cylinder in a different way. Let's see now how we can do it, because these are going to be the main two ways in which we're going to be making objects in this program. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make it from a cube. So I'm going to scale down the cube. So now the cube is quite small. I'm going to scale it down there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it up like that. I said that you shouldn't scale like that, but like I'm going to do it like that for now. So now what I'm going to put it is in a subdivision surface. Do you remember that we used that before in Cinema 4D?
Yeah, if anybody's done the Cinema 4D courses, you'll be very familiar with this way of modeling, I think.
So,
and you'll be pleased to see it pass over.
So we're going to find it there. It's called subdivision surface as well. And when I do it, look what happens. Everything gets very ugly. The subdivision surface, I'm going to do a couple more subdivisions here so people can understand what's going on, and I'm going to make it smooth. So the subdivision surface gets the geometry of the object and gets points and kind of makes a soft transition between points. But right now, because we only have points at the bottom and at the top, it's making this really ugly arch that goes all the way. But to solve this, we remember that this can be activated and deactivated at any point. I think it's here. We can activate and deactivate. So this is non-destructive. And the only thing we're going to do is now generate a couple more cuts at the bottom and top of my cube. So I'm going to go into the edit mode. And now you see here you have this thing called loop cut.
Yeah.
If we click and drag, I can make the loop cut wherever I want.
Okay.
It's quite cool, the loop cut. You have many options because if I click as well, I can do different number of cuts if I want to generate more cuts. I can do smoothness on the cuts. I can do a lot of different things. But for now, I'm going to use the cuts in the way I usually use them, which is click and drag. I'm going to make a cut there, click and drag, and make a cut.
And you're making the cuts fairly close to the top and bottom of the shape there.
Yeah, and that's because I want to transition. And let's reactivate now my smoothness, and let's what happens. Now the program is knowing that the geometry is going to go there, and between this point and this point is going to make a smoother transition.
Okay.
So I'm getting a similar effect to that, but sometimes I like it because it's even smoother than this. This is a bit too digital, and this is it has a tiny bit of curvature all around.
I know what you mean. It gives slightly more of an imperfection to the whole thing, a bit more homemade quality.
And you saw it before, this was looking a bit ugly because I was using a realistic lighting. I'm going to go more to this mode, the viewport shading, that is a bit faster and it's easier to see. You see that there's this arch all the time. And if I want less arch, I can make a couple more cuts here and there.
And can you move the cuts after you've made them?
100%. I can go to the points, and imagine if I want a smoother or like the curvature to be different, I can select the points on top, Alt and click. I'm going to go to selection mode, Alt and click, and selecting the points on the top. Is this not selecting the points on the top? Okay, right now it's not selecting the points on the top for some reason. We can select them like that manually. And I'm going to move them. And you see it's getting smoother or sharper.
Yeah.
And as well, you can explore what happens if you change the scaling. You can do it more like that. You can do it more coming outwards. That's already giving me an idea if you want to make something like an axe. You know, sometimes the bottom of an axe gets. And this type of kind of control you have that makes things very cartoony, you don't really have in this mode. And that's why I like it. But let's continue making the shovel, and then we'll see how to make other things, because that would be the body of it. And in order to make this very top, very simple, you could make it with another cylinder. You could make it just copying the shape. Let's see how we can copy a shape. So if we go back to my object mode, I can select this shape and I can do Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, and now we made a copy. And I can simply move it up, scale it, and scale it there. Okay?
Oh, simple.
Simple.
So you don't have to do any of the things like adding the subdivision surface, because that's already there.
That's already there. And if you don't like it because you think that it's looking a bit too sharp, we can select this top of the shovel, and in my edit mode again, we can select the points. I'm going to select faces mode. I'm going to select the points on the top, move them up, and it's getting a bit smoother.
Okay, so this is a bit, again, just like Cinema 4D, that there's lots of different modes that you can be in. Yeah. And if you're thinking, why can't I select that thing? It might be because you're in the wrong mode.
Yeah, remember always to move between the edit mode and the object mode. Those are the ones we're going to be using mainly in this tutorial, and those are fantastic right now. So I'm going to get rid of this shovel from the left, because I'm preferring, I think everyone is agreeing that this new way of doing a shovel is much better. So we're going to do it with this mode. And now let's copy this again. Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V. Let's go to move it all the way down. So now I have it all on the bottom. And let's see how we can make this part of the shovel, okay? So like always, we can start from a cube. So I'm going to select these three things, and I'm going to move them here because I like to have them in the middle. It's going to make much easier my life. And now I'm going to add an object. I'm going to do it with Shift A. And you can see here that I have quite a lot of different meshes, including a rock generator and math function.
And a monkey.
And a monkey. The monkey is the symbol of Blender. But if in your Blender you don't have all these options, it might be because you haven't added anything. You have the standard Blender. Okay. Blender has a lot of hidden features that you can activate or deactivate depending if you need them or not. To find them, if you go here in Preferences, you see here that you have something called add-ons. And in the add-ons, you can see that they have the official add-ons, the community, and the testing add-ons. Okay. And depending on what you want, you see here I have the activated Add Mesh Extra Objects. Okay. I simply have that one activated. During this tutorial, I'm going to show you some of them that I added because they are quite useful and they bring some interesting things. Right now, I have that one. I have an animation pose library activated, by Division motion capture. Actually, that was activated. I didn't activate that myself. I have a few different ones that are activated. But this is showing you as well that you can kind of make the program very modular. And if you are finding on the internet, sometimes you can find on YouTube videos that say, oh, my favorite 10 add-ons. And you can watch them and think, oh, actually, that add-on can be very useful for me. But the program is trying to kind of have those add-ons hidden so you don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah, I like that. So you only have the options if you're going to use them.
Exactly. But if you want to put the one I have there to have extra objects, just add mesh extra objects. If you cannot find it, I think there's a nice search bar here. You write it and you simply click and activate it and it's going to be there. Okay. So now I'm going to add a mesh. I'm going to add a cube and let's do the same. And you see, by the way, with the cube, you have the same thing. At the beginning, when you're adding a cube, you have all the different options, so you can modify them here before you start modifying the cube. But in a cube, it's quite simple what you have. So let's see what we can do. I'm going to go to my edit mode already, and let's start modifying my cube. I'm going to select the faces. I'm going to make it already quite together there. And it's quite, I mean, a shovel is so simple. The only thing we're going to need, I'm going to go back to my object mode, and I'm going to put that there. And it's going to be basically copying the shape of this. And in order to copy it, we need to generate new geometry, something we haven't done yet. And my favorite way of kind of expanding a shape or you could make it making a cut. That's a way of making it. Yeah. But also you can do extrusions. And if you have used Cinema 4D, you know that extrusions are a great way of modeling. So let's see how we can do an extrusion. We're going to go in my edit mode. I'm going to select the face here that I have on the top.
Yeah.
And now the extrusion is hidden here. The shortcut is E or spacebar E. So if you do a spacebar and E, now you have an extrusion and automatically it's going to extrude in the same direction as the normal of the polygon. So the polygon is pointing down and I'm going to extrude. And you see, in reality, it would be the same result as if I kind of made a cut there.
Yeah, and then you could have made it longer, sure.
So in reality, that's another way of doing it, but you can do it as well with extrusion. Mm-hmm. And then in later on, we'll show you how you can model with symmetry. But for now, this object is so simple that we don't even need symmetry. I think sometimes people use symmetry too much. I only use it when I need it. So I'm going to make a cut in the middle because usually the center of the shovel kind of goes a bit backwards.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a cut. I'm going to use the loop cut and I'm going to click and I have a nice cut exactly in the middle. And automatically after the cut, the program is selecting the new geometry, the new lines are generated. So I can do a space bar, move, and I can move them backwards. So I'm already making something that looks a bit more like a shovel.
Yeah. It's interesting how you're making it so much before any kind of subdivision surface. You're already having all of the idea in your head.
And then I made the cuts later to make it smoother. And now I want to select points. I'm going to select points and I want to select these 2 points because I want to put them down to generate the triangular option. Yeah. And either I move here and I kind of try to select those points, or if I select like this, I'm not selecting the point at the back. You see that?
Yeah.
Because I need to be in this transparency mode. And in the transparency mode, I can select points at the back and front at the same time. And I use that so much when I'm modeling that in the end, I learned the shortcut. It's Shift Set. So Shift Set is just a transition between the line mode and actually, I'm going to say the things well. They have the solid mode and the wireframe mode, okay? That's how Blender calls them. So I'm going to be in wireframe mode. I'm going to select those 2 points. I'm going to move them down. And then I usually go out of this mode because it's quite difficult to model on it. So I'm going to kind of leave this mode.
So you go Shift Z and you're back in the solid mode.
I'm actually going to select all these points. I'm going to move them up and I'm back in the solid mode. So there I have it. This is looking quite good. And now I'm going to go back to my object mode. I'm going to move this part of the shovel. I don't know how it's called. It would be the metal part. And I'm going to put it there. That's looking quite good. And now I'm going to put it inside the subdivision surface and let's see how ugly it looks. So how would you call this part? Let's call it metallic part.
Yeah.
Metallic with 2 L's. Metallic.
That sounds good.
Part. Okay, I'm putting a few names and then we're going to put them inside the collection, no worries. But I have the metallic part here, and I think it might be that it's not completely aligned to the middle. If you want to make sure that all the objects are aligned, if you select each of these objects, you see that in set is on 0.6. I put it on 0. Oh, actually, that's on 0. It was for the vertical axis, so that was wrong. Actually, it was the location X, the one we needed. And the same with this one, location X, we're going to put it at 0. And the same with this one, location X, we're going to put it at 0. Now we have them all aligned. And here in this one is fine in location X. And let's go, if you remember here in the modifiers, we can add a subdivision surface. Here it is. And when we add it, you see how ugly it looks.
Not what we want.
I'm going to do 2 levels in the viewport. You see that there's levels in the viewport and the render. That's exactly the same we have in the cinema. So it's basically sometimes we want it more subdivided when we are doing the final render.
Yeah, but we don't want to slow it down as we're working in the viewport.
Exactly. So now I'm going to do right-click, shade smooth, because I'm now checking how it's going to look. So that's a bit better. And you see that it looks too soft. And that's because we don't have enough cuts. Let's see what we need. Let's go to my edit mode and let's see what's happening. You see right now it's quite cool in edit mode because we can see both what we are showing in my, how the object is looking. But if we look at all this wireframe, we are seeing the original geometry.
Yeah, that's very handy.
So let's see what we can do. One of the things we need is more cuts here in the vertical. So this triangular part kind of goes more together, okay? So in order to do it, we're going to do a loop cut, and I'm going to drag and drop there, one of the cuts, and drag and drop because it's symmetric.
Yeah.
And I have 2 cuts there. And you can already see my shovel kind of got much more clear cuts. And now let's do one on the top. So it goes there together. And for me, that's kind of enough. I know that some other people would start making more cuts, but don't make that many because there's something pretty about it being very, very smooth. We're making cartoonish things.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit like if it was a little toy. It probably wouldn't have too many sharp edges.
Exactly. And now probably this part to transition a bit better, kind of the entire geometry could go backwards, but I cannot see those points. So in order to see those points, and remember that you can go as close as you want. In order to see them, I need to make this disappear, but I don't want to get rid of it. So simply in the object mode, if I want, I can select it. And here you see that you can make it disappear in the viewport. So I'm going to hide it in the viewport. And now I'm going to hide as well this part in the viewport. I'm going to select in my edit mode. I'm going to select the points that are here, these 3. And now I'm going to re-show all these objects in the viewport. I'm going to go to my move mode and kind of move this backwards. So now it looks a bit better because now I have a smooth transition. Usually this frontal part is like that. You usually see the part, but on the back, I like having my shovel looking like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's looking pretty
fantastic.
Good.
First ever model in Blender.
Yeah.
And as you said, surprisingly did make a lot of sense to start with something fairly simple, but using a lot of options.
We have done almost everything, or I think actually everything has started from cubes. We showed you how you can even make cylinders starting from cubes. And the only thing now we're going to do is put it all inside a collection, just because it's very important to be organized. So if we do right click here in this panel, we can make a new collection. And let's call the collection, I don't know how to spell it. Can you write it for me?
It'll be, well, you can call it whatever you want if you're watching at home and thinking, shovel. What on earth is a shovel?
Call a pala in Spanish. So I'm going to drag and drop everything that belongs to the shovel inside the shovel. So I can select, I actually could do it like this. I could select all these objects here, and I can drag and drop them inside shovel. So now I have my shovel there, and I can put them inside the collection of the scene. So I now have a collection that has all of these objects, and I can kind of collapse them. So now my icon says that we have 4 geometry objects inside my shovel, but I don't need to see them all the time. And if you need to move the shovel, it's a bit annoying. Like I would like to be in a different way, but you simply have to do right click and select objects. So now the program is selecting all the objects at the same time, and I can move them around. Okay. I'm saying this a bit annoying because usually I like working with nulls, but Blender works a bit differently. I would like to be working like I work with nulls in Cinema, but for now this is how it works. So we have the shovel, we have it there, and we'll see you in the next tutorial, modeling more things, learning new techniques, and also we're going to start seeing how we can start lighting the scene to make everything look pretty. No worries, things are not going to look grey and ugly.
All right, thank you. See you in the next lesson.